Hi there, my name is Mackenzie H, and welcome to my brand new podcast series and stuff like that. I'm going to do a little rambling introduction about what this podcast is all about before I get into the topic of this episode. So basically, if I have a topic I want to talk about, I write it down on a document on my phone, and then every 2 weeks, I go through them one by one, record myself talking about them for roughly 45 minutes, and then fix it, and then upload it for the people of the podcasting world to enjoy. I'm hoping to do these bi-weekly, which is once every 2 weeks, and I'm hoping to record on Fridays, and have them uploaded on Saturdays to wherever that's going to be uploaded. I'm very, not very new to this podcast style, but, pretty new, pretty inexperienced, so a lot of this is just guessing. It's quite funny because 10 minutes ago, I finished making the profile for the podcast, and I have to tell you, picking one category to stick with for the Apple Podcast thing, that was really challenging. But a category, because if you know me, if you're a follower of me, you know that I'm kind of a variety guy, the music that I like, the kind of videos that I've made in the past. So it was really difficult to pick one category. I think I decided on art because a lot of the topics that I talk about are art related. Especially this episode, so you're in for a treat because the category of this podcast is actually fitting with the episode, so there you go. But hopefully I've got it all sorted. I think the first couple of weeks will be a bit rough, but I think it'll smooth out. I'm fairly confident if I do end up doing one every 2 weeks, I'm fairly confident that I have enough to see out the end of the year and into the start of the next. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that I want to talk about. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking a bit about creative writing and, how that has influenced a lot of what I do online, especially now. So I think my creative writing got its origin back in primary school. I believe it was year 7 or something, I think maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, I believe it was year 7. And there are two... Actually, no, in year 7 there was only really one thing that comes to mind. And a while ago, in year 7... when I was about, what is that? No, it wasn't year 7. No, I'm thinking of the wrong year. It was year 3. In year 3, I was 7. That's where you got the confusion from. I think I was 7. It was in year 3, and I made something. Well. Sorry, this is all over the place. This is how the rambles go, I try not to edit. I'm going to try not to edit this too much. I'm going to try and keep the rambles in. But basically, we had this computer lab in the primary school. By the time I left that school, there wasn't anymore. But there was a computer lab. And one day we went in and we were told to go onto this website, Draw Stickman, I believe it was. I'm sure a lot of, people recognize that game from their childhood. It was a game on the computer where it was basically an animation, an interactive animation is probably the best way I can describe it, because you had this little stickman that would walk and it's draw me a key to unlock this box, and you'd draw something that vaguely resembled a key. You could draw whatever. I remember discovering this a couple of months back And being the mature, almost 18-year-old adult that I am, everything that the stickman asked me to draw, I just drew a penis, you know? It's great, you know? But yeah, you could draw whatever you wanted, and the stickman would basically use that to his advantage to do the things that he needed to do. Now, I played the first one, and something in that must have lit a spark must have ignited in my head, basically, because I believe that is the very point where my interest in like creative writing and just writing in general started, because very shortly after I made a comic out of paper. It was very bad, but it was a stickman comic, and it basically knocked that off, you know? It played along some of the things from the first and second game, I believe. I'm pretty sure the first and second game. I took some elements from that. What I actually did was I had these two friends. I had these two friends in the class. And what I did was, in the comic, there was this plot point where the stickman needed two objects. And what I did was I actually cut them out of paper. I cut the objects out of paper and gave them to the two friends and said, hey, when I call upon these objects, could you come up and give them to me? As for the reason why, I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I would basically take those objects and continue reading. Now, I decided that it would be a good idea to read this comic in front of my class. At about 7 years old, I decided that this was a good idea. You know? Because why the hell not? Why wouldn't you? I'm sure we all did dumb stuff as a kid. I don't know if you classify this as dumb, but to me it was. So, yeah. There I am, up in front of the class, 7-year-old me. And it didn't go too bad from what I remember. I think it was pretty good. This was years before my stage fright kicked in, and my fear of performance, which is a topic for another episode. You're going to get that in, I don't know when, a couple months maybe. It's not as high up the list as this. But yeah, it went pretty good. Yeah, and it was such a cool feeling because a little while later, there were these girls in my class, right? They were always there, I guess. But a little while after I read that comic, they had made their own version of it, like Stick Woman. And like looking back on that, like I didn't think much of it back then, you know, being the stupid, small-minded child that I was. But looking back on that now, that was like such a cool thing that I influenced based on something that like inspired me that I basically copied. I don't know if I would be allowed to get away with that now because I feel like I would hold myself to higher standards, but you know, I believe I made two of those comics and a Christmas one. I don't think I read them all out in class. I remember reading out the first one and the Christmas one, I believe. But I actually still have 6 of them right here with me. Yeah, 5 of them are themed, and those were like in my later years. But I have the Christmas one here. So what I did was I took like a regular... Well, this wasn't a regular piece of paper because this is like smaller. What the... Oh, hold on, I'm trying to figure out what size paper. Is that A4? I don't know. I think it must be. It must be A4. But I used for the first, second, and Christmas ones. I basically took some paper, folded it in half, and stapled it. Oh God, looking back through this is so bad. There's probably going to be a video on the channel at some point about these. I mean, I don't know if I want to put these on the internet or not. But basically, what I find so funny about this now is that my ability to not spell Christmas. Instead, I just put Xmas because I knew that Xmas and Christmas were pretty much the same thing. This was not good. Oh my God, that's horrible. So in this, I'm flipping through it now, but in this, there is a drawing of Stickman sleeping. He has no eyes, but he does have a smile. Now, I don't like that. That's not good. This is bad. What is this? I just found some sort of like measurements or something on the back of one of the pages. Oh, that's bad. Now, after that, I believe I made two other ones, and then it went into this unfinished trilogy. Wait, what is this? What? I get it. All right. I'll tell you about this bit later. So I made two other ones. I made two after the Christmas ones, and both of them were themed. So I'm going to take a pure random guess at what the titles are. Stickman in Harry Potter and Stickman in Star Wars. I believe the Star Wars one was first. No, the Harry Potter one was first, and then it was the Star Wars one. And then I made two. I made two for Back to the Future, and the second Back to the Future one, it kind of transferred over to a new series, Stickman in Doctor Who. Now, what's funny about this is the bit I was chuckling to myself about earlier, was that it says Episode 1, Series 10. Now, I find that funny. I find that really funny because at the time, I don't believe Series 10 was a thing in Doctor Who. So I kind of just filled in that gap with a very stupid thing. This basically took... I don't even think... Oh, God, this is bad. I hate this. What is that? That's meant to be a screw, but that's not a screw. That looks like a penis. I'm not even kidding. I flipped to page 13 of the first Stickman in Doctor Who one, and I drew a screw, but it looks like a penis. Oh, God, that's horrible. How did I get away with that? So I made two of these. I made two of Stickman and Doctor Who, and I started to write the... I started to draw Stickman in Doctor Who Part 3. Now, oh God. Just quickly skimming through this. This is all just a mishmash of felt and color. This is really bad. I basically just shoehorned in characters from Doctor Who and tried to make this as clever as possible, but it's bad. This was so bad. I'm glad that you guys... I'm glad that this podcast is audio only. I'm glad that there is no camera. Because this is bad, and I hate it. This just is so bad, and I don't like it. I'm sorry I'm repeating myself over and over again, but it is true. Oh, wow. I got up to page 21, and then I just stopped. And I don't know how the series ended. And it's so shocking because I don't even know where the series was going in the first place. But I made those up until my last year of primary school, and then I just stopped. Can't imagine why. If people at high school found out about this, especially as I was a year 9, I would have been bullied shitless. I'm not even kidding. I can proudly admit this stuff right now. I can proudly do that because this is my thing. I don't care. I don't care. As people can know about this stuff just as long as they never see it. I don't know how I feel that I have these. We only just got these out of the storage lockup a couple of months ago when we moved into the new house. But yeah, those are pretty much what kickstarted my creative writing. About 2 years after I made the first one, I was in year 5. I was in year 5. I was 10, I believe. Yeah, I was about 10, and I was tasked with writing something. Now, at that time, I was really into Harry Potter. As you could probably tell, I made a Harry Potter stickman thing. I was really into Harry Potter. Harry Potter was like my childhood thing. Me and a couple of friends recently watched Deathly Hallows Part 1. We watched it in Blu-ray 3D. And it was quite good, yeah. Like, I remember why I liked this stuff so much as a child. Yeah, I feel like I should rewatch the entire series, but I digress. I'm getting off track. But yeah, so I was really into Harry Potter at the time. Sorry. Yeah. I was really into Harry Potter at about the age of 10. And I was asked with writing like some sort of story or something. And what I started to write was basically a written version of was it a Lego Harry Potter YouTube video I saw? I think it must have been. I might need to find that video again. I don't know if it's still up. But what I remember is that it was funny, at least to my 10-year-old brain. But I was told that I couldn't write about that, and I had to come up with a new idea, basically, a new concept. So what I did was I was also, as a child, I fucking loved Cartoon Network. Adventure Times was probably one of my favorite shows. So basically what I did was there was this other video, actually. There was this video that inspired the story that I wrote. Because I was also into Minecraft, as I believe all of us were in about 2000. Yeah, like 2014, 15. Yeah, 2014 and 2015. We were all really into Minecraft, especially as 10-year-old kids. And I liked Stampy. Stampy was a YouTuber that I'd occasionally watch, and it was one of his videos that inspired this basically a whole story. Yeah, I think it was his 100th video, I think. It was like Cat to the Past or something. Now, don't laugh. at the title of what I wrote, all right? I want to say that I was heavily inspired by that video. And we all know what inspired means. It means I ripped it off. What I wrote was a story called Man to the Past. Fuck's sake. What was I thinking? It's so shit looking back on that now. I'm so glad that any trace of what I wrote back then has all perished. It was all gone. It's all gone now, and I'm so glad. Because from what I remember, it was all filled with very bad, like, the story was inconsistent. It was so bloody inconsistent. It would just be all over the place. Now, it might shock you that it wasn't a very long story, you know, it was like 3-4 pages, you know, at most. And that's what, yeah, it was like 3 pages, like 2.5 pages. And that's what I would call done. That was done. Now, what upsets me the most is that I made 2 more of them. I actually made 2 more of those, and they were roughly about the same length. So it was still like less than 10 pages. And that was the full saga. That was the completed trilogy. Fuck. What was I thinking? The second one was even more inconsistent. Because, yeah, it was basically a YouTube video and Adventure Time that inspired what I wrote. Creative writing, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we all started somewhere, you know? Maybe this is the reason why I can't write songs. Like, I can't write lyrics to songs. Lyric writing for songs is just so incredibly challenging for me. Maybe this is the reason. I don't know. But yeah. I wrote the first one in about 2014, I believe. And I wrote the others somewhere between that and my last year of primary school. I don't know why, but for some fucking reason, I decided to put the full story not onto an entire Google Doc, but onto a Google Slide presentation. Why? What was the point? Just use a fucking Google Doc. This was so bad. I am so glad that this was all saved on my old school account, because when I left, that account was deleted and any trace of what was there is now gone. And I am so glad it's gone, because if I had to read even a single sentence of what was left, I would cry. And I think it got even worse in the third one, because I think in the second one I introduced a villain which was pretty much one of the villains from the Lego movie, Bad Cop. Why? I don't know. This was just a mishmash of a bunch of different ideas and none of them were good. And what's even worse is that at the end of the third one, I had plans to continue the story under a different title. Thank God I never did that. I am so happy I never did that. Oh God, that was all bad and I don't like that. But yeah, so that was basically what my creative writing got me in primary school. Yeah, I think it was during that time that I kind of expressed interest in like a murder mystery novel, you know, like a murder mystery story. Yeah, so I believe in 2018, when I started high school, I started writing one. I tried to write one, and what was 2.5 pages, like 3 pages as the entire story. What was that before was now like 3 to 4 pages a chapter. Like, my writing was actually going somewhere. I never finished it. But basically what it was a murder mystery, like detective novel set in Christchurch in New Zealand. Now, yeah, I kind of had plans of where I was going to go, and it's so much of a cop-out, you know? It was such like a bad ending that I had in my mind, but I thought it was good. So, basically, at the start of the novel, there are these 2 tourists at Arthur's Pass, which is the point between Greymouth and Christchurch. It's not directly in the middle, but, you know, it's good enough. So what there was, the 2 tourists walk into a cafe in Arthur's Pass, and they see this guy sitting at the table, and they start asking him questions like, you know, has anything interesting happened here recently? And the detective then proceeds to tell them of a murder that happened, and that was the murder that was explored in the story. Now, the ending that I had was, I had no idea who the killer would have been, because I never got that far. I never got that far as to actually, like, have suspects. But what the ending was is that eventually the killer would have been captured, and they would have been driving to the station in the police car, and then the detective would have been involved in an accident, like a car would have hit the car. When the detective came to, nothing. The suspect, the murderer, was just gone. It escaped. And then it cuts back to the cafe, and it's revealed that the person telling the story was the detective. No surprise. That's how I was going to end it. You know what? It's slightly better than the last one. In my head, the ending that I had planned for the detective novel was slightly better than any piece of shit I wrote for Man to the Past. It was better. But yeah, I didn't really get that far in it. I would try again in 2019 to write another novel, because in 2018, I got really into the Stanley Parable. I got really into the Stanley Parable. And in all fairness, the Stanley Parable is a really good game. Even the original still holds up, and it's still, you know, quite a fun game. I've yet to... Well, I long for the day when I have an actual PC so I can play it again. But, yeah, so I decided in 2019 I was going to make, like, a fan fiction. But it wouldn't... But, okay... It wouldn't have been a fan fiction like the kind that you normally read, you know, the sexual kind. It would have just been a fan story, I guess, is a better way of saying it. Now that the meaning of fan fiction has such like a... Basically, any idea of a fan fiction, like the definition of a fan fiction... Any idea of what that was has been just dragged through the mud and turned into something sexual. That's the problem. Because when I've given up on what I was trying to say. But basically, it was a fan novel. It was a fan story, not a fan fiction. So, yeah, now that you get what I'm saying, I tried to make something. I forgot how many pages of that I wrote. But in 2019, I tried to write a novel, basically, and it was the Stanley Parable one. I didn't know if it was entirely legal. Sorry. I didn't know if it was entirely legal because I was using the IP of someone else, another company. Now, I wasn't aware of copyright law. I wasn't aware that it was a big problem, so I thought I could just sell it. I couldn't. Even if I finished it, even if I tried, I couldn't. I probably wouldn't have been allowed to. Even though I I reached out to I tried reaching out to the company multiple times, and they saw my responses. They just never wrote back. Which is fucking stupid. Why didn't they write back to me? I don't know. But anyway, I finished the end of it. Basically, it was following Stanley as he was going through some of the endings. And eventually he would confront the narrator, and I kind of envisioned the narrator to kind of look like Dr. Breen from Half-Life 2. You know, I kind of imagine the narrator kind of looking somewhat similar to that. So that's kind of what I based the description of his character off. Basically what I remembered from Dr. Breen. Yeah, so at the end of the thing, it went into this big battle where Stanley would kill the narrator, and I thought it was good, and I showed it to a bunch of people, and I especially showed it to my English teacher, who said it's a great story, but it's a bit short, even though it was 20-something pages. So I was like, okay, right. I decided to make a second and third part and combine them all into one. I didn't even finish the third part. I didn't even start it. But basically, in the second part, it starts off with Stanley living his normal life, and then the narrator comes back. So, yeah. But you may be asking yourself, on the edge of your seat, how did the narrator come back if he was killed at the end of the first one? That's a good question. How I did this, I have no idea. And this is probably one of the stupidest things I've ever written. It's slightly below A Man to the Past, the entire thing. But basically, the narrator was some sort of alien. So basically, how Stanley killed the narrator is that he stabbed him. And a little bit of the narrator's blood got into Stanley's ear, and now... And the blood mutated from that, I guess, and now the narrator has been reborn and is living entirely in Stanley's head. Now, basically, the narrator comes back, Stanley goes through some more things, and then discovers that there's some sort of mystery going on. He starts to actually wonder where all of his co-workers are, because that's the whole point of the game. Well, it's not the whole point of the game, but it's a plot in the game. Now, eventually, the last thing that Stanley does before I ended it off was he did the 4-hour baby game ending, where he had to push the button 4 times. Well, not 4 times, but he had to push the button continuously for 4 hours. And then once that happened, instead of, the essence of divine art ending, a door opens and it leads to some sort of basement, and I think I ended it off on saying Stanley wasn't real, and then he gets knocked unconscious. I don't know. In the third part, I had plans. So Stanley would basically wake up in this basement, and it would be kind of like an escape room at the start where he had to find a bunch of things in order to escape. I don't know what was going to happen from there, but I know the penultimate scene is that we finally encounter the boss of the facility, and we learned that it was, just a mind control thing after all. It wasn't just a thing. It was actually properly a mind control facility disguised as a high-tech company, And you meet the boss, and of course, in any typical style, he is insane. Yep. He's also holding Stanley's wife and kids hostage. And he detonates the building. But Stanley gets out in time. So, yeah. It just ends. Cool. That's where the third part was going to go. And I'm kind of glad I didn't do that. Like, it was a cool idea. I didn't finish it properly, but so basically I abandoned it after chapter 2, well, the second part in 2019, but at the end of 2020, I decided to make the third part a bit shorter and maybe make it into some kind of audiobook, because I feel like that would have been fun. But then I realized how much work that would take. Yeah. So, yeah, that was around the end of 2020. Now, we more or less get onto one of the projects that I was actually so happy about. Because in 2020, during lockdown, I started working on audio projects and voice acting. I tried to get a bit of work as a voice actor because, I feel like it would be good. And throughout 2020, I had successes. For example, one of my biggest successes in voice acting is when I got into a small student VR game. Project Concrete. It's very difficult to find. I've tried to find it. But basically, it was kind of like this Portal-esque game, but without the portals. You got an evil machine who tries to kill you, I believe. I haven't played the game myself, which is sad, but that's one of the things I want to do this year. In my Digitech classroom, there is a VR headset. It is the kind that I need to run this game. I need to play this game. This may be my only chance to play the game. I want to play it. Oh no, there's Pepsi on my face. Oh no. Oh god. Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of my successes in voice acting. But in 2020, I tried working on some voice acting, and I tried signing up for the website voices.com. And I had to use like a little voice demo. So I decided to write a short thing. That was like 2 pages or something, like a couple of pages long. And what I did was I read that off, and I was going to post it, and I was going to sign up, but I eventually decided not to. And then a little while later, I was looking over that, and I thought, hey, this is actually pretty good. There's like a potential for a cool audio thing here. What if I took this and made this like the basis of it? And that's when I decided to start working on an audio project called What Was Left. Fun fact, that audio project is still available on my first channel today. Well, not my first channel, but my channel before music channel, basically. Yeah. It was a 40-minute long audio series, not including the mini chapter, but I'll get onto that later. So the script that I read off for voices.com is actually, I actually modified that script. I edited the script, and that became the prologue chapter. So there were 6 chapters. There was the prologue, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. After I released it, I added a mini chapter to kind of clear up a question that a friend of mine, well, not a friend of mine, but a friend of a friend, had like a kind of like confusion moment. That's basically the only way I can think about it. But yeah, so I made a mini chapter to kind of like tie it up, I guess. Now, I got a bunch of really cool people to voice all of the different characters in it. And it was pretty cool. Like, it was, at that time, it was one of like my best things that I'd ever done. Yeah. So, yeah, if I were remaking that again now, it would definitely be way different. It would be way more better. But at the time, it was really good, and I was really proud of it. There were a couple loopholes in the writing, And I wasn't exactly a master with the audio. In the first episode, some of the characters are very quiet. I didn't do a very good job at balancing them out. But, it was good. It worked. I released them all before the 6 year... 6 year? It would have been the 6th year. Yeah, the 6th year anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's, which, so that audio project was heavily inspired by the Five Nights at Freddy's book, The Silver Eyes, the novel. Because at that time I was really into Five Nights at Freddy's. I've gone through a lot of different arcs as to things that I liked growing up. But yeah, what was left? That was pretty cool. I was very happy with that when that came out. I haven't listened to it in a while. I probably should. So what else have I done in terms of creative writing? Not much. This audio project that I made 2 years ago, and that's pretty much it. That's like the latest thing I've made. I might make another one. Because I feel like I could, I feel like I could. I feel like it would be fun and just be a really cool thing to try again, especially with my skills as a musician and an audio technician now, an amateur audio technician. I'm getting there. But I could definitely make something really cool. That's pretty much all that's coming to mind, So there you have it. That's the first episode done of And Stuff Like That. I hope you will all join me in 2 weeks' time for the next episode. Hopefully this is coming out on Saturday. That's New Zealand, by the way. It'll probably be Friday for many people around the world on the other side of the globe. But I hope to iron out the details pretty soon. So, there's nothing really left to say other than to say thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!